Hyundai i30 and review verdict, prices and rivals. Updated i30 and small tweaks yield big results, making this the hot hatch of the moment. It's hard to believe, but the Hyundai i30N has been around for nearly 5 years, in that time completely transforming Hyundai's image amongst those interested in driving, and has since become a byword for the modern hot hatch. Hyundai's hot hatch presence started with the i30N, and it remains its best-in model, and after a recent update that focused on small but meaningful elements, it's now the best hot hatchback money can buy. The previous generation's entry-level model is now gone, and prices for all others have gone up across the board, but the i30N still feels worth every penny. There's more variety this time around, too. The i30 Fastback has returned, and both cars are now available with an optional dual-clutch transmission that was specifically designed for the i30N and its requirements. Adding even more daily versatility to the package of 2 pedals is a must. So right now, in 2022, this EN competes in an ecosystem with the best of the VW Group's efforts, a strong Ford Focus and Renault Megane RS, and even a hot rod front-wheel drive BMW. Yet the Hyundai remains unbeatable. The i30N sits at the top of a very talented field, and it's a truly fantastic thing to drive. Hyundai i30N. In detail. Engine, gearbox and technical specs. The i30 engine is slightly more powerful than before, plus a new DCT joins the manual. Performance and 0-60 times. Some rivals are quicker, both on paper and in the real world, but it's certainly not slow. Ride and handling. Hugely variable driving experience underpinned by great adjustability and balance on and over the limit of grip. MPG and running costs quite thirsty, and 25063 fills can get tiresome. Tires can be expensive, too, but Hyundai's 5-year warranty is welcome. Interior and tech cabin materials are a little shaky, but the fundamental touch points are bang on. Design far less expressive than Hyundai's newer designs. Update has sharpened everything up without fundamentally changing too much. Price and rivals. Hyundai condensed its in-range to just the one version a couple of years ago, dropping the standard 247 billion horsepower model and leaving just the high-spec variant. As a result, the i30N's head-turning £25,995 starting price no longer applies, but even comparing like for like, the new i30N's £34045 base price is a substantial £4,000 plus jump. The new DCT adds a further £1,950 to the price, making the 5-door hatch £35995, but given the effort and expense involved in its development, which we'll go into later, it feels like a good deal. Fastbacks are an extra £750 again. The good news is that unlike some German rivals, the i30N is superbly equipped as standard, so there's not a lot you'll be adding to that price in terms of extras. Metallic paint aside, the only option available is the new lightweight sport seats at £600, a very worthwhile upgrade. Standard kit across both models includes Zen-specific body styling, a leather steering wheel and jerk knob, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integrated into the new, larger navigation and infotainment screen. Both the standard sport seats and optional buckets are trimmed in Alcantara and leather, electrically adjustable and heated. From a hardware perspective, there's also an electronically controlled limited slip differential, new forged 19-inch alloy wheels with Pirelli P0 tires, bigger brakes, an active exhaust and adaptive dampers. As for rivals, Volkswagen's new 8-Golf GTI has in fact been knocked back from its previous highs, with the standard TIS driving experience ultimately underwhelming in terms of performance and feedback, while the GTI Club Sport hits harder but then finds the limits of its chassis even more quickly. Specify the right optional wheels and tires, adaptive dampers, and a few toys that are otherwise standard on the i30N, and you'll be way over the 40,000 pounds mark, making it seem especially expensive for what is inherently an inferior hot hatchback. And the less we talk about the VU's digital interface, the better. The Cupra Leon 300 TSI is a similar story to the Golf, with similar limitations and flaws, but in a slightly more enthusiastic and rambunctious package, a curious contrast to its decidedly mundane design. The Skoda Octavia actually does the best job of relisting the current generation of VW Group hot hatchbacks, especially with its manual transmission, but the Hyundai remains by far the most entertaining and capable on any road surface. The Ford Focus has its own flaws, namely a lumping engine and iffy steering. The chassis has a sweet balance, and despite its hesitation to rev, is the quicker car, especially in higher gears. The Renault Megane RS runs things closest to the end, and the stock models of the previous generation remain in the dealership network. But if you can find one, expect to pay over the odds, as its popularity exploded just as Honda said it wasn't going to build any more. Funny how that happens. This means that for now the Hyundai reigns supreme in the hot hatchback market, not just as an all-round good buy, but also as the most fun you can have in a hot hatch of this size, although look smaller, and the Toyota GR Yaris, Ford Fiesta Scent, and even its smaller sibling, the i20N, offer big smiles for the money. The i30N's power comes from a 1,998cc turbocharged 4-cylinder 30 engine borrowed from the wider Hyundai Kia conglomerate. It's a simple enough unit, with one big turbocharger and a pretty standard electronically controlled direct injection system. Power has gone up marginally as part of the i30N's update, reaching 276 billion horsepower between 5,500 and 6,000 revolutions per minute, while there's 289 pounds of torque available between 2,100 and 4,700 revolutions per minute at 29 barrels, and 10 pounds dries over the original. As mentioned, along with the 6-speed manual is a new 8-speed dual-clutch transmission that's designed specifically for the i30N and the closely related Koni N and Veloster N, available in overseas markets. It's a wet clutch unit that isn't just designed for fast shifts, it also facilitates various new software-based modes that have questionable names, but essentially give you direct access to full bore upshifts without any torque dip, and therefore a corresponding snap and a clever adaptive setup tuned specifically for track driving. Drive is then sent to the front wheels via an electronically controlled limited slip diff that, while effective, doesn't quite give the end vacuum like front-end grip. Structurally, the i30N is much like any other car in this class, with a steel, 5-door monocoque shell and steel panels. In terms of hot hatchbacks, its suspension setup is also common, with MacPherson struts at the front and a multi-link axle at the rear. As part of the N's upgrades over a regular i30, the chassis receives a strut brace between the rear suspension towers, as well as additional welding in the shell. Fastback models carry a little more of their weight towards the back of the car, which actually improves the front to rear weight balance. Its shape improves its aerodynamic. Initially, the Fastback's chassis differed to that of the hatch, including longer bump stops from 55mm to 62mm, spring rates reduced by 5%, and a 1mm thinner front anti-roll bar. But from 2020, these chassis changes, along with reduced camber on the rear axle and stronger gearbox and differential mounts, were made to the i30N hatch, too. Brake discs measuring 360-314mm front and rear respectively are standard on both body styles. Both hatch and fastback are fitted with a new set of forged Dykes 9-inch wheels and 235/35 R19 Pirelli P0 tires, with electrically assisted power steering and 2.14 turns lock-to-lock. Officially, the i30 manual weighs in at 1,499 kilograms, a subtle 10 kilograms drop compared to before on account of the new model's forged wheels and optional lightweight bucket seats. The dual-clutch transmission only adds a relatively subtle 36 kilograms to the total. All also feature a variable exhaust system. It's loud, raucous, and perfectly judged to the car's character, with pops and crackles thrown in for good measure, pleasingly sounding far from synthesized as they do in several other cars. Engine and exhaust noise can be tailored via the custom mode in the driving mode menu, so you can switch it off when you want to fly under the radar. A firm, short-throw gearshift and good traction also both contribute to the entertainment factor of extending the engine, while a reassuringly firm brake pedal pays dividends when it comes to shedding speed. Hyundai i30 review performance and 0-60 time. Some rivals are quicker, both on paper and in the real world, but it's certainly not slow. If there is a weak point within the i30's dynamic package, it's the Theta turbocharged engine. It's not a slow car, far from it, but compared to the engines found in rivals, the 12-liter 4-cylinder can be a little flat. While it revs cleanly to its red line, it doesn't have the top-end enthusiasm of units found in the Megane RS and Civic Type R, and it also lacks the huge mid-range punch of the latest Focus Scent. The extra power is nigh on impossible to feel, but the extra torque does make its presence known, albeit at a slightly higher point in the rev band than before. The engine's relative lack of sophistication is partly due to its fairly humble beginnings in American market midsize saloons and subs, making this feel like a potent engine put into a small car, rather than one designed specifically for the job. Performance on paper is strong enough though, breaking the 155 miles per hour mark, having passed 62 miles per hour in 5.9 seconds. Not class leading, but on the money with its rivals. In our own performance testing, we recorded a pre-facelift i30 performance at 60 miles per hour in 6.6 seconds and 100 miles per hour in 14.9 seconds. DCT models take a huge 0.5 seconds off the 0.62 miles per hour time, down to 5.4 seconds. The difference on account of not just the faster shift times, but also its shorter gearing. Hyundai i30 review ride and handling. Hugely variable driving experience underpinned by great adjustability and balance on and over the limit of grip. There are hot hatchbacks with more grip, some with more adjustability, and others that will outsprint the i30 point to point, but none will do everything the Hyundai does with so much broad talent or engagement. It's a near compromise-free driving experience that is engrossing in a way that no current direct rival can manage. The i30 steering is the first statement of intent. It's weighty even in its lightest setting, not unlike that of a BMW Motorsport product. Delve into the menus and it's possible to adjust the weighting, and on the road sport mode feels about right. Whichever setting you choose, it's always responsive, with the slightest movement off the straight ahead resulting in a positive and proportional reaction at the front axle. There's grip to back it up too, and feedback that feels natural rather than artificial, which allows you to push deeper into the engine's talents. It's not a chassis likely to catch you out, either, unless you take liberties, while the rear end will rotate with a sharp lift of the throttle, and it matches grip with poise and a sense of fun that's missing from some rivals. There's a hint of old-school Renault Sport in there. 3 stages of stability control: off, Sport, and Normal give you options depending on how much you appreciate electronic intervention. but the electronically controlled limited slip diff is so well managed that it's best to switch it all off and have some fun. For an electronic system, it feels nicely mechanical, and you can lean on it to get the best from it and ask more of the front two Pirellis regardless of the angle of the curve. It finds strong traction on the exit of lower gear corners and manages torque and understeer through the quicker stuff with an unexpected level of sophistication. Our biggest criticism of the i30N hatch when it first arrived was how ride quality had been sacrificed, or perhaps optimized for racetracks and ultra-smooth tarmac roads, therefore pegging back its performance. It was initially rectified with the introduction of the i30N Fastback, which received softer chassis settings, and before long Hyundai's N Performance division equipped the hatch with the same chassis setup. A reduction of the front wishbone angle and a drop in spring rate of 5% were at the core of the changes, so too 7mm longer bump stops and a thinner anti-roll bar. At the rear, the camber angle was also reduced. The result of these chassis changes to the 2022 model year i30N is a hot hatch that you no longer need to fight with if the surface deteriorates or you find yourself on a typical UK road. Its newfound softer edge rounds off the original car's harder focus, allowing the car to breathe with the road in a more consistent manner than before, therefore allowing you to exploit and enjoy more of its performance more of the time. There's a further fine layer of polish to its steering, too, with a little more accuracy to work with, allowing you to lean on the diff that bit harder. They are incremental improvements, but then there wasn't a huge amount to rectify in the first place. So while there are hot hatches that have more power and torque to get you down the straights a little quicker, few will allow you to carry as much speed through the corners as the Hyundai i30 and review MPG and running costs. Quite thirsty, and 25063 fills can get tiresome. Tires can be expensive, too, but Hyundai's 5-year warranty is welcome. We've become familiar with modern cars failing to match their official combined consumption figures in normal driving. And while performance cars often get closer than many, they aren't designed to be economical in a very specific set of conditions from the outset. The i30N's real-world fuel economy is still slightly disappointing for us. Officially, it'll do 35.3 mpg combined on the WLTP cycle, around 5 shy of the old NEDC measurements, a figure matched by the Fastback in Performance. That's fairly close to reality, where you'll be looking at mid-30s on a gentle motorway run and possibly just scratching the surface of freedom in everyday driving, with numbers plummeting the more performance you use. Oddly, despite the extra gears, the XMPG rating is lower than the manuals at 33.6 mpg. Blame the transmission's habit of throwing fuel into anywhere it'll burn for the sake of those jolty upshifts. On its own, this car's MPG wouldn't be such a problem. Plenty of other cars in this class will do similar, albeit few are quite so thirsty, but the 50-liter tank can often seem a little on the small side for a car consuming at that rate. In theory, around 300 miles should be possible, but a realistic fill-up interval of around 250 miles can wear a little thin on longer trips. If you enjoy the performance, then you may want to heed the cost of replacement tires. The N's 235/35 SAR19 Pirelli P0s will set you back over 150 pounds a corner, fitted from online tire supplier Black Circles, but it is a wheel size ripe for experimenting with different tire suppliers. Still, Hyundai's 5-year, unlimited mileage warranty should redress the balance somewhat when it comes to ownership, and aside from a few sat-nav stutters and a pessimistic tire pressure sensor, our fast fleet i30N Performance proved trouble-free over 7 months of use. Hyundai i30N review: interior and tech. Cabin materials are a little shaky, but the fundamental touch points are bang on. Save for lots of hard and slightly scratchy textured plastics here and there, there's not a lot to complain about in the i30N's cabin. As with the standard i30, it's logically laid out, feels well built, and offers good levels of comfort and refinement. The big changes for the update include a new infotainment screen that's both wider and has a higher resolution than before. The actual interface is more complicated than it used to be, but the core functionality is still there, and there are even more in-mode toys to play with. There's also the new lightweight sports seat option, which replaces the fundamentally good standard seats with a thinner and more aggressive-looking design. As well as having better lateral support and a more direct connection to the chassis, the new seats also look the part and don't lose out on their built-in heaters. The steering wheel is good to hold a chunky but not too chunky 3-spoke affair, whose buttons for stereo controls, cruise control, and information display functions are logically arranged. Here you'll also find 2 larger, performance blue buttons used to select drive modes. On the left spoke is the button to switch between eco, comfort, and sport modes, while the right, denoted with a small checkered flag, switches between in mode and a custom setting. Those custom settings are adjusted through the central touch screen and are one of the i30N's highlights, allowing you to tailor the drive to your own preferences, for ever just a couple of quick presses on the N button away, and only ever a press on the left-hand button away from switching back to the car's more relaxed modes. For us, it's driving modes done just right. A final mention deservedly goes to the dial pack, which is the same as on the old car and mercifully lacks the overwrought graphics of the i30, and instead, you're left with clear and crisp analog dials with an active red line a la BMW and a well-sized display between that shows only useful information. Post-facelift standard i30s have replaced this with a completely digital instrument cluster, so the active decision to keep on with this older dial pack is a welcome move from the team. Hyundai i30N review design. Less expressive than Hyundai's newer designs, update has sharpened everything up without fundamentally changing too much. The N's exterior design is a similar story to the inside, as fundamentally it is sound, bar some well-placed and well-integrated modernizations. At the front, the previous i30N's theme is continued, but the lines and junctions sharpened right up. There are no longer the lower mountedles and indicators, these having been integrated into the new headlights. The wheels are a new 19 inches design that crucially are forged and therefore both weigh less and look more racy. They're less stylized than before, with a graphite finish replacing the chunky diamond cut design, and with the thinner spokes you also get a clearer look at the chunky brake package behind. The rear end is more of the same. New LED clusters look cleaner and sharper. The lower valance is slightly bigger, and the huge new exhaust pipes are more expensive looking with their thin gauge steel tips. The triangular third brake light remains, that's a win, and so too the performance blue hero color. Despite its age, the i30N doesn't look like a car in its 5th year of production, but rivals including the new VW Golfs look sharper still, their actual competency notwithstanding. While for ultimate hot hatchback kudos, the new Honda Civic Type R looks to be righting its wrongs with a brutish and brilliant new look.